Foreign Secretary Liz Truss will speak to her Ukrainian counterpart today about the plight of captured fighters Aidan Aslan and Sean Pinner. Both men have been sentenced to death by a court in the self-declared People's Republic of Donetsk, which is held by pro-Russian rebels.
Well, we're now joined by former Conservative Cabinet Minister Robert Jenrick, who is the local MP for Newark, where Mr Aslan lived. He wants a prisoner swap to be negotiated for the pair. Mr Jenrick, you've spoken out about this so much, haven't you, from the moment when they were taken prisoner and now hearing the news yesterday that they were sentenced to death by firing squad. What went through your mind?
Hi, well, good morning. Thanks for having me on the programme. I was just so worried for them, and knowing their families, Aidan's mum and grandmother live in my constituency, and I've known them for many years, you can only imagine how worrying this situation is for them. And I was also outraged that British citizens could be treated in this manner. You know, they've been hooked out of the normal process that you would use to treat prisoners of war, put on this sort of Soviet-era style show trial, and now sentenced to death for no good reason whatsoever. These are innocent people. So I think it's absolutely appalling that British citizens are treated like this, and we now need to find a resolution, which hopefully will be a prisoner swap. Those swaps are happening between the Ukrainian and the Russian armed forces, and we want Russia to stop violating the Geneva Convention, treat these individuals properly, and bring them home through a prisoner swap as quickly as we can.
Of course. Now, a couple of things I think everybody would echo what you're saying that's heard about their story. Two things, though. One, of course, Russia, as part of its tactics for trying to frame the narrative, has said this isn't a war, there are no Geneva Conventions, this is a military intervention, a special mission. And secondly, are you fearful that the more you speak up as their old MP, the more it strengthens the argument that they're mercenaries and not official Ukrainian members of the army?
Well, we have to be absolutely clear that these are not mercenaries. Russia don't believe they're mercenaries. They're just using that for propaganda purposes. These are British citizens, but for personal reasons, they'd both gone out to Ukraine some time ago. My constituent has a Ukrainian partner, joined the Ukrainian armed forces in the normal way long before Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, and was captured at Mariupol along with a lot of other Ukrainian soldiers. But instead of being treated normally in accordance with the Geneva Convention, as you would for combatants, he has been put on this appalling show trial, a sort of kangaroo court, and ultimately sentenced to death. There's no credibility in Russia's case here whatsoever. I do think this issue will ultimately be resolved by the Ukrainian government discussing with the Russian government rather than the UK. But I do think it's very important, nonetheless, that as their local constituency MP, that I push this matter as much as I can. And I think the Foreign Secretary and her ministers should be having the most robust conversation with the Russian ambassador to say you simply cannot treat British citizens in this manner. They need to give assurances that these individuals are going to be protected, and then they need to be swapped for Russian prisoners of war in the normal way.
Mr Jenrick, have you spoken to Liz Truss about that? Has she given an indication that the Russian ambassador will be called to see her, to discuss those things? And potentially, have the Russians given any indication, whether behind closed doors or not, as to a prisoner swap and who might be involved in that?
Well, the Foreign Office haven't confirmed whether they're going to summon the ambassador yet. I hope that they do, because I think we should be sending the clearest signal possible that is unacceptable behaviour. In terms of the likelihood of a prisoner swap, I hope that that will be the ultimate outcome. Both sides in the conflict have a number of prisoners of war. Russia has a couple of thousand Ukrainian soldiers. Ukraine has a couple of thousand Russians, and prisoner swaps have happened in the recent past. So there's every reason to believe that that's possible. Russia has been going slow on this issue so that they can use the Ukrainian soldiers that they have for propaganda purposes, and they obviously care much less about the families of their own soldiers than the Ukrainian government cares about supporting their own citizens and prisoners of war. But I think there is a possibility that a prisoner swap can happen. Last night I met the Ukrainian ambassador here in London, and he gave me an assurance that the Ukrainians will give priority to Sean and Aidan in those prisoner swap negotiations. So let's hope that that is the ultimate outcome and we get them back home to their family and friends. But in the meantime, we have to be very, very clear and robust with Russia that they can't take British citizens hostage and think they're going to get some kind of political advantage out of that.
OK, we're going to have to leave it there, but Robert Jenrick, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.